Aw, man. Cosmonaut and I had the same exact idea, except he uploaded his video first. How am I supposed to make my video unique compared to his? Oh, I know. That's better. So the boys, Thor, and Miss Marvel all kinda came out within a few days of each other. So instead of doing one video per thing, I'm just gonna make it a triple feature. I got a lot to talk about, so let's not waste any more time. What the shit? The Boys is really good. I got hooked on this show a year or two ago when season 2 was already out. I love this show so much that after I finished it, I immediately rewatched it afterwards. And right before season 3 came out, I watched it again one more time, so it's safe to say that I really like the show. The Boys has done a really excellent job of making an intense and engaging story while also giving our characters enough time to grow and develop. It has the perfect balance between plot and character driven. I love the obvious parody of our real life superhero dominated world mixed in with heavy social commentary. The writing in this season has been particularly good. The plot continues to mold and evolve further and further along, and we never really stay in one spot. The budget of the show got a great improvement. One thing the older seasons did a little bad was how it looked. The show always had a dark, gritty, and gross feel to it, but now it looks normal. And the action got improved on a lot. The previous seasons didn't really have the budget to shoot over-the-top action sequences, so a lot of them were really quick and didn't have a lot of choreography to them. But now we get those super-powered punches we deserve. That fight in episode 6 is one of my favorite superhero fight scenes ever. The characters are also done especially well. This is a very character-driven season. Most of the characters in this show were pretty good. The Boys usually has a way for every one of its main characters to have a role in the story without it feeling unnatural or out of place, and season 3 does that pretty well. Every single character in this show is going through an arc and makes them all more engaging, even the side characters. I really like how the main theme of this season is learning to find yourself and to not let your past define you. Every single character is doing things that you wouldn't expect them to be doing without it feeling too out of place like it was a writing mistake. It's kind of like if Luke didn't try to kill his nephew, but still wanted the Jedi Order to go out. Kimiko and Frenchie accomplished this as well, but they kind of split off into their own little side story in the middle of the season. It's the first time where some of our main players don't really interact with the story, so it threw me off a bit, but they got the job done. Acting is top-notch. This show doesn't have a single weak actor in it. Anthony Starr definitely takes the gold here. He did amazing the previous seasons, but he took it to a completely different level here and made Homelander even more menacing. Soldier Boy got a really big build-up and I liked his character a lot. There's only 2 characters that kinda got fumbled this season. First one is Black Noir. See, Noir hasn't had much to do in this show. He's kinda just been the funny guy because he doesn't talk or emo and has just been used as a weapon. He hasn't really been part of the narrative that much. But in episode 7, Noir finally got some development. We finally learned about who he was and what his relation is to Soldier Boy, and it's one of the most creative parts of the entire show. And then he dies. He dies. Just like that. What the hell? Now I'd like to think that maybe somehow he's gonna come back, but the way this scene was directed and shot makes it look like he's really gone. But I don't know, the show definitely has had a way of subverting my expectations, so I'll let this one pass until season 4. What I won't let pass though is Queen Maeve. Now Maeve has actually had pretty good writing this season, except for this sex scene. I don't know why this happened. But in the last episode, they decided to pull the strangest move by not killing her. I believe this was the perfect place to end her character. The whole show, she's done some messed up things and has been told over and over how bad she is at being a hero and how she's not worth it. She finally has a chance to do the most heroic thing ever, which is to sacrifice herself to save everyone. And they don't let her do that. This just seems like a really desperate attempt for a happy ending, and I don't think it works at all. I mean, her girlfriend just magically comes back even though she's still mad at her and doesn't really want to be interacting with her anymore. She just shows up, like, what? This also makes the final battle not have any real emotion to it. See, season 2 was very emotional. That was probably the most emotional climax I've seen in a while, with Rebecca's death and Ryan choosing Butcher. It's honestly one of my favorite scenes ever. This finale pretty much puts emotion to the side and leans more on spectacle. And while it looks nice, I'm someone who definitely would rather take emotion instead of a cooler fight scene. The main strength of this show has always been the character writing. Some of my favorite scenes in this series It's just our main characters talking about their feelings. Hopefully season 4 tones down on the superhero action a bit and instead gives us more of a roller coaster of emotions like it usually does, because as it stands, the ending to season 3 kind of just feels like a part 1 to me. So The Boys season 3 gets an 8 out of 10. Alright, next! This one's gonna be a little less positive. Thor 4 and New Thor was a very, very mediocre movie in my opinion. Where to start? First thing I didn't like is the overall tone of the movie. The film is definitely sillier than Ragnarok, and that's kinda for the worst. See, Ragnarok was a breath of fresh air compared to the dull, lifeless husks of the first 2 Thor films. Ragnarok gave a much needed personality to Thor, and it worked really well for that film. Here though, I kind of feels like Waititi was just trying to outdo himself. There's more jokes in this movie, more over-the-top action sequences, but it all just feels off. I know it's very subjective to say, but I just don't think this movie was funny at all. There's like 2 lines and a couple of moments that made me chuckle, but otherwise it was pretty forgettable humor. Speaking of action though, the film does have pretty cool action. It's over the top and flashy as you would expect from Marvel. Visually, the film still delivers, and I'm glad Waititi still provides some personality to these movies, but the action isn't enough to save the biggest issue for me: the characters. Let's go down the list, shall we? She-Thor was kinda cringe, bro. I've never liked the idea of Jane becoming female Thor. It just felt really forced in the comics because every hero at the time was getting replaced by an already existing character. Her movie version, though, had some potential. Until she didn't. She starts off pretty strong when we first see her. She's a suffering cancer patient who gains newfound confidence in becoming a superhero and learns the meaning of being a real hero by sacrificing herself to save the universe. Now on paper, that sounds pretty good, right? But the movie fumbles with it a bit. Like I said, she's pretty good at the start, but then her character morphs into a rookie archetype. I guess she's supposed to act like this since she just got her powers, but the way they go about it was just really awkward. She doesn't really stand out in any way in this movie. She doesn't have that MCU level of charisma that makes her character feel real. It's a mixture of both her performance and writing. It all just feels really forced. Korg is just there as comic relief. Glad he got a boyfriend in the end, but he doesn't really do much in this movie. Valkyrie was especially unimportant. I really liked her in Ragnarok, but she's pretty much pushed to the side here. They teased that her arc was gonna be related to her not wanting to be king of Asgard, or that she was gonna get a new love interest or something, but then she just gets injured and leaves the movie. Really disappointing. And here we have the main man himself, Mr. Odin's son. Unfortunately, the main character wasn't great either. I still like how he's a himbo character who doesn't really understand what's going on. I also noticed this while watching the movie.
Why don't you, go have a smoke or something, okay? I got this. Oh, and, you guys. You are the real heroes.
Thor did this exact same scene in the beginning, and I thought it was really funny. The issue I have with Thor in this movie is his character arc, or more precisely, his 2 arcs. Because the movie tries to give him 2 different arcs by the end. One is his relationship with Jane, which I thought could have been better, but it got the job done. And the other arc, which was clumsy as hell. Thor apparently now wants to be a father figure / role model, and this motive comes from nowhere and isn't built up at all. He has a few scenes with Heimdall's son, which, by the way, was the dumbest addition to this movie ever. I mean, come on. He was literally only implemented into the movie so Thor could know where Gore was going. Thor then decides to bestow the power of the gods into a group of children that idolize him to help him beat the bad guy. Now where have I seen that before? Then Thor just adopts Gore's resurrected daughter with zero motive attached to it other than because Gore asked him to. This father figure arc just felt really forced and should have been planned out way better. I think the only character I genuinely liked was Gore. He was pretty hyped up for this movie, and Christian Bale does a pretty good job as everyone expected. I could have used more of him in this movie, honestly, but otherwise he did a good job. There's just dumb things lurking about this movie, and the more you think about it, the more annoyed you'll get. Why did Gore kidnap a group of children for? He had no reason to do that, and they served zero purpose. The way Eternity was presented was really clumsy. They set up barely any rules or anything related to it. I think something like Eternity should be set up way better than a brief explanation, because I have so many questions about how it works. Can Eternity literally grant any wish? How many? Is there any catch to them? How come Jane didn't wish to be cured from her cancer? Was it because Gore opened the door and not her? Why does resurrecting Gore's daughter give her superpowers? Is she part of Eternity now? You see what I mean? Overall, this movie is very flawed, but still somewhat enjoyable in a turn your brain off kind of way. It doesn't make me angry like some of the really bad Marvel movies, but Thor 4 was just too mediocre to be enjoyed. I'd give it a 5 out of 10. Okay, one more thing. Let's go. Woo, I'm getting sleepy. Miss Marvel, more like mid-Marvel, this show went downhill pretty fast. This one is really odd for me because Miss Marvel actually starts off decently. The directing and editing was really fun, had a cool style to it, and made the show stand out. Iman Vellani is perfect as Kamala, and the story starts off as a nice teen comedy similar to how Homecoming was presented. It's a cute show, but then the story changes. The show starts off as very character-driven, but then at the halfway mark it morphs into a plot-driven show about spirits from another dimension and time travel. Where the hell did these elements come from? What? From episode 3 onward, the show loses its identity as a cute comedy and turns into a boring-ass, generic superhero show, and the transition isn't smooth at all. And then it tries to morph back into a silly comedy in the last episode, but the damage is already done. You can't just go back to cheap-ass slapstick and thinking it's gonna slide. A lot of the characters who are heavily involved in the story are just pushed to the side for new ones because the story changed. The villains in this show are probably the worst ones in the MCU, and the MCU has had some pretty bad villains, but these guys are just the worst things ever. I don't even remember their names and I don't care. They are so predictably evil, but the way they go about it is just so bad. The evil spirit people go from "we will guard you and protect you, Kamala" to "we will now murder your whole family because we're impatient." Like, huh? The writing for these bad guys don't even have the bare minimum amount of character traits. They are laughably bland. Also, the effects. Holy shit, I can't even make this up.
Come run.
These are PS2 graphics. Marvel Studios, more like Mappa Studios. I know I've complained about this in the past and a lot of people already realize this, but Jesus, man. How are the effects getting worse and worse? Like, how am I supposed to pay attention to this very anticlimactic climax of the show when all of this eye-melting mush is getting shoved in my face? The show just feels so misguided. It feels like two different people wrote the season, but then both ideas got glued together because the elements from the first 2 episodes are almost completely dropped by the last episode. And then they have the balls, the audacity to confirm mutants exist? Like, what the fuck? Where did this come from? This seemed really out of place for me, and I feel like the confirmation of mutants should have been in a much larger project. Because this is the equivalent of Maul showing up in Solo, and it just doesn't fit at all. Why am I comparing this to Solo? No one watched Solo. This show could have been just a nice, cute story about a young girl who learns how to be a hero, but instead, the story tries really hard to be ambitious when it didn't need to be. They try to add in all of these elements to make it a big, grand journey, and it doesn't even have a main villain until episode 3. This could have been Marvel's equivalent to Encanto, but instead, they try to make it Raya and the piece of shit dragon. Miss Marvel gets a 4. Finally, alright, we're done. 3 reviews in 1, and I feel tired. So I really only enjoyed one of these things, and it's not even Marvel related. Go figure. Hopefully the next thing I review will be better. No. 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 No.